Tonight on Insider, Israel is on the brink of a dramatic move, sending its forces further in to occupy Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls it the only way to defeat Hamas and secure Israel's future. Critics call it a dangerous gamble that could cost lives, deepen divisions, and of course, ignite a diplomatic firestone. Will it bring the hostages home or burn any chance of their return? Who will actually run Gaza the day after? And is this truly about security? Or is it about politics? I'm Maayan Hoffman, executive editor of ILTV News, and tonight, former MK Mossi Raz and former Ambassador Mark Regev join me to debate the plan, the risks, and the alternatives. Let's get started. So I think, bottom line, we need to just ask this question. Is a renewed military occupation of Gaza a good plan for Israel's security? Mark, why don't you start?
My assessment is that we didn't have a choice. It's clear to me that the government and the Prime Minister didn't want to be here. It was widely reported that Netanyahu put a withdrawal as part of the negotiations. He wanted the negotiations through Witkoff to succeed. And it was widely reported that he put on table a proposal, a map for Israel to withdraw, and it wasn't acceptable to the other side. Then he put another map, and then he put a third map on the table. It was clear to me that the government was willing to go and the extra mile to get that deal with Witkoff. But when Hamas closed the door, I don't think there was a choice. What else was to get a deal with Hamas proved impossible, so you have to increase the military pressure on Hamas until the situation changes.
Do you agree?
No, first, I don't think that there is a plan. You said if we are here to debate the plan, I'm not sure that there is a plan. It's just, I don't know, press conference and vague resolution in the cabinet. Second, Prime Minister Netanyahu keeps saying in the last 2 years, every time, before every move, that this is the last move to win Hamas. And I don't know what is going to be in the future, but I know that it did not happen in the past. And most likely that it will not happen even now. The government, yes, of course they want to seal a deal about hostages, but the question is, what's the price? And I think the government has to say first time since the war started, and this is what the protesters in the street want. We are willing to a deal which says full withdrawal from Gaza, full release of all hostages, release of prisoners, and end of the war. The government doesn't agree to that. And I think I don't want to talk about Hamas. Hamas is a terror organization. I don't have to anything with Hamas. The government is my government. The government doesn't agree to that, and I think this is what majority of the Israelis saying in the last 22 months, and they never wanted that. So if they say that, and then there is no Hamas agreement, maybe they can have some support to their moves. But right now it seems that it is dangerous for hostages, dangerous for soldiers, dangerous for the Gazans who suffer too.
And certainly dangerous diplomatically.
You say to withdrawal. So most of the Israeli public in the polls I've seen don't agree to go back to the old before the October 6th line, 2023. Most of the Israeli public says there has to be a perimeter, a security
zone, right?
And I think the people on the kibbutzim on the border, they don't want to see Hamas back on the border. The idea of releasing Nukba hostages, prisoners, I should say, the prisoners who raped and killed and beheaded, which is also a Hamas demand. We can't agree to this. I don't think Israel can agree to this. There are certain things that Hamas, to get a hostage back, we have to pay any price. I don't know if you were in the Knesset at the time, I think Gilad Shalit was a mistake. Looking back, it had strong support, but it was a mistake historically. I think, though we have to do everything that is possible to get the hostages out, it doesn't mean we should forget everything else. And most of the Israeli public, you are correct. If you ask the Israeli public, are you willing for a deal that brings the hostages out and ends the war? They all say, you get a strong majority that says yes. But when you say, are you willing to give up the security perimeter around Gaza? Are you willing to release the Nukba prisoners? Are you willing that we don't have a connection on the Philadelphia so they can smuggle in weapons? Do you agree that Hamas stays in power in Gaza, which are all part of the conditions? Then the numbers change very radically, and they don't have a majority.
I don't know where is the majority. I do think, and I found like that from the beginning of the war, that there are two goals. The first one is to not only disarm Hamas, but to kick them out from Gaza, okay? And the second goal is to release the hostages. I think the second one is more important than the first one. And I think there is a contradiction between them, because not likely that Hamas will agree to release hostages if they know that then you kick them out from Gaza. So you have to, and I'm not saying this is a very difficult decision, but I prefer to see people coming back home.
But what about the people that could die in the future? It's like, I remember the Gilad Shalit campaign, and it's not fair totally to compare to Gilad Shalit because that was one soldier, and then now we're talking about 20 live people, many of them soldiers, and 30 more bodies, yes? But it was, everyone had the name and the family, and I understand it's very human to identify. And we have 20 names of live people, and we know the families, and we understand the pain. But how many people were killed because of the Gilad Shalit release? And can we really just ignore the dangers involved in allowing Hamas to go back to the perimeter, in releasing the Nukba terrorists, in allowing Hamas to stay in power? How many other people will die if we make a decision that is not a calculated decision?
But I think we do have to ask.
How many people will die if we go on with the war? Because 500 soldiers will died or fall in Gaza, more or less 500, and of course many Gazans and hostages. So what's the price here?
Well, and I think we have to ask whether or not it will even be effective. I mean, given the fact that Netanyahu just said the other day in that press conference that you mentioned that there are still thousands of armed terrorists, Hamas terrorists and others, in Gaza, and we have been fighting a war for 22 months. So I guess the question also stands, when we go in and we go further into Gaza and try to take over more, will we be able to actually then eradicate Hamas? Will there be any difference? And equally important, how is it even possible that after 22 months, we still have thousands of armed Hamas terrorists in Gaza?
So it's difficult. It's a war of attrition. And in a war of attrition, the one who gives up is the one that loses. I'd make a comparison. I know many of our viewers are from North America. Remember in the last few years of the Bush presidency, and everyone said Iraq was a quagmire and nothing was going to right, and George W. Bush did a surge and he was very critical, and in the end the surge was a success. I think this could be Israel's surge now. This could be the turning point because you only have a few places where Hamas is still in control. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. And one has to ask the following question. Why did Hamas, when everyone thought, President Trump thought, Prime Minister Netanyahu thought, the Qataris and the Egyptians thought we were very, very close to a deal, what happened in the end?
They want to keep the hostages.
No, that's also true. But the main reason is, why do they hold tight? Because they think the international pressure on Israel, the internal pressure on the government, they just have to hold tight, and in the end, they'll get what they want. And that's why we've got to show them, no, we are determined to win this.
But I think the hostage families are saying, of course, that this is also sacrificing the hostages. But I do have to question whether that is true, to be honest, given the videos that have been released and how much it looks like the hostages are being sacrificed the longer the war is prolonged. And we don't, not only we don't have a deal, but like we need to fight for them and maybe get them out because Hamas doesn't seem to want to give them back to us, as you mentioned, with any kind of deal. So, I mean, what are your thoughts, Lindsay? Do you agree with the hostage families that going further sacrifice the hostages, or is it in fact the opposite? That if we go in, maybe we can rescue them?
I could think like that 22 months ago, but I see what are the results of this military operation in the last
Well, there were
years.
251 hostages when we started.
Most of them in a deal, not because of using of the army. Second, you mentioned the number of armed terrorists. According to the IDF, there were 40,000 Hamas armed terrorists in the beginning of the war. We killed 60,000 people. Most of them are not terrorists. And now, according to the IDF, there are still 40,000 armed Hamas terrorists. So what have we done all these 2 years? This war is not making the Hamas weaker. Not at all. Not at all.
Do you agree?
This war makes Israel weaker.
I respectfully disagree. I think we are slowly but surely, and it's a war of attrition. It's not the 6-day war where Israel does a blitzkrieg and it's over in a short time. This is a long, drawn-out war, a bit like Ariel Sharon defeating the Second Intifada. It took time. It took effort. It took, unfortunately, the lives of young soldiers. But in the end, we can win this. Hamas is holding out, or for international pressure on Israel to make us stop, or internal pressure. Why did they release those videos of the starving hostages? It's psychological warfare. They want us, okay, we have to give up and agree to all their conditions. No, this is a war. We have to win it, and we have to bring the hostages home too, of course.
Netanyahu talks about a new civil administration in Gaza. He has 5 points to what's going to happen right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the fifth one is there will be a new civil administration, which will not be the Palestinian Authority, which will not be Hamas, but somebody else. If it is not the PA and it is not Hamas, where is this civil administration coming from?
No civil administration. It must be the PA, maybe different PA. The Palestinians, first, as a Zionist, I think that while the Jewish nation has the right to implement the right of the Jewish nation according to the international law, this is the basic of Zionism, the first Zionist Congress. This was the definition. The Palestinians have the same right. Second, I don't think that we are going to have security before Palestinians are not going to be secure. They are not secure. So I think the basis of the mistake is the disagreement of the government, or maybe all of the Israeli government, to this idea of two states. And when you don't have peace, you have war. This we know from all over the years. So, of course, there is no justification to war, no justification to war crimes that were committed in October 7. Nothing that Israel did is justify that. But we cannot be surprised that when you use power, they use power in a violent and criminal way. So we have to deal with that. We must have an agreement. And my colleague, Mark Regev, said that in 1967 it was blitzkrieg, theoretically. But what did we get out of this winning of 1967? We got 2 wars with Egypt. One was war with Syria, 2 wars in Lebanon. We got the first terror attacks of Palestinians in Israel, missiles to Israel in 1969, and the kidnapping of airplanes, and the first and second Intifada in October 7. So I don't agree that we won in 1967. Yes, we took lands, but our security collapsed. Young people in Israel, before October 7, go to the army to a longer service than before 1967. Why? Because we don't have security. Why? Because we have to keep all these big lands. We have to occupy another nation, and it doesn't work.
Mark, respond.
Since 1967, we signed a peace treaty with Egypt, with Jordan, with Bahrain, with the UAE, with Morocco, and we had one with Sudan until that country fell apart, unfortunately. And I think if we try to say, let's put the Palestinian issue front and center and ignore the willingness in the Arab world to make a deal with Israel, we're making a mistake. It's possible to move ahead as Gaza winds down with Arab countries to make peace. And I say with respect, two-state solution, today, most of the Israeli public is not there. And more importantly, the Israeli parties who were the people behind Oslo, Meretz, Labour, and this. I remember before the last election, which was on October 7th, before October 7th, before the terrible massacres, I remember leaving where I live in the car, and Meretz was handing out little red roses that I should vote for them. And they had 8 reasons on the rose on a piece of paper why I should vote for them. They talked about defending democracy and getting rid of Netanyahu and fighting corruption and the rule of law and fighting religious coercion. They didn't have a Palestinian state there. Even the left today, if you ask them, and do you believe in a Palestinian state? They will say it. But you have to force them to say it. You have to ask them. They won't talk about it because they know the Israeli public, even their own potential voters and the ones they want to get, are simply in a different place.
And perhaps even more importantly, by all polls in the Palestinian community, they're also not necessarily for
100%.
a two-state solution. Now, Mark, Mossi mentioned something very interesting, which is that the Palestinian Authority is the body that should take over the governance in Gaza. Do you believe that the Palestinian Authority can effectively do that?
Well, I'd like to see the Palestinian Authority be a bit more effective on the West Bank before I see them do something in Gaza, because it's clear they don't control the West Bank for all sorts of reasons. I understand, if I understand the government's thinking, it is, first of all, defeat Hamas, because no one else can emerge if they think they're going to get shot in the middle of the night by Hamas terrorists. You have to first get rid of Hamas. And then the idea is to create something with the support of the Americans and the pro-Western, pro-peace Arab countries. And that will have legitimacy. There was something in the paper this morning about a former PA official who's acceptable maybe to Israel and the Americans to bring him. So I think that's where we're headed, but you can't do it. If anyone wants to emerge and they fear they're going to get shot by Hamas because Hamas still controls the ground, they're not going to emerge. You have to win the war first. You have to finish the war for there to be a day after.
But can you helicopter a government in?
It has to have legitimacy. It has to have legitimacy, and it has to have Arab legitimacy. And I would say there's a chance, because I don't know if Mossi will agree with me on this, but after nearly 2 years of war and all the destruction, the people in Gaza are fed up with Hamas. Not because they like me or they like Israelis, right? They've got their historical grievances and their hatred. But they saw where Hamas brought them. It's like sitting in Berlin at the end of the Second World War, yeah? What did Hitler bring upon me as a German? Yeah, they would. So the same thing in Gaza. They don't like me, but they like their own lives. And they see what Hamas did to them. And I think there is an opportunity to see someone else fill the void.
Do you agree?
I do agree. This is exactly why I am right. I mean, the Palestinians in Gaza, yes, they fed up from Hamas. I'm not sure that in other places, but they are not fed up of their Palestinian nationality. They don't want to see the Israeli government come and send them away. They don't want to see the Jewish settlers come and start to take their lands and kill them like they do in the West Bank. So, and the comparison to Germany, I'm fine with that. What happened in Germany? The Allies did not say, you Germans, you committed the most terrible crime in the history of the world. But it doesn't say that you don't have your right for self-determination. It doesn't say that you don't have your right for a state. And if we say that, we can go on. Right now, what they say, we must defeat Hamas. How long you would say that? 100 years from now, you're still going to say that? So you say that for 60 years. It's not only 2 years. This is what actually right-wing, which is including, I agree with you that almost everybody in Israel is right-wing, say for 58 years, or actually Hamas was founded 8 years ago. This is what they say for 30, 40 years. Until when are you going to say, okay, it doesn't work what I said. It doesn't work. We got October 7 because Netanyahu's policy doesn't work.
But part of the policy also, of course, is to keep Gaza demilitarized, which means that whatever government comes up is actually not going to be an effective government because there's not a state. There's a military and there is a government and there are different bodies that govern. So is even the idea that we would have a demilitarized state viable? Because how do you have a state that's not a state? I mean, Mark, how would you tackle this question?
So I would say in the immediate post-war period, when this is over, it'll be like Area C in the West Bank.
Yeah. Okay.
In other words, maybe partly B. In other words, as part of Oslo, the West Bank was divided into areas where there was total Palestinian control, partial joint with Israeli security control, and an area which is still under Israeli control. And I think you're going to have something like B and C. You're going to have a situation where you'll have Palestinian civilian control or under international auspices and overriding Israeli security control.
But then won't this be a diplomatic nightmare for Israel? I mean, look how we are perceived based on what is going on in Judea and Samaria.
So it's not easy, okay? Israel is facing a very strong diplomatic backlash against us. You can't sugarcoat it. It's not easy. But I think you have to look at it in this way. Israel is paying a price. The hostages are still there. The hostage families are suffering. We are losing soldiers, as Mossi said, in a war. And unfortunately, we're going to lose more before this is over. That's a fact. The economy is taking a difficult time. And Israel is going through all sorts of hardships to win this war. And if part of that is a difficult diplomatic, international thing, okay, I'm willing to pay the price. The most important thing is to win the war. Golda Meir once said, she said, I'd prefer a bad editorial to a positive eulogy. That's where I am too.
So we're going to run out of time, and I want to just get then your opinion. So let's say Netanyahu's plan is not the right plan. We're against Israel occupying Gaza in perpetuity, militarily. So what is a credible plan B? Mossi, what really needs to happen? Because I think that, from what Mark is saying and even what you've said, tomorrow there's not going to be a Palestinian state. So what is plan B if we don't go forward with this plan from the government?
The government doesn't have plan B. They want to fight against they defeat the Hamas, and they know that it's not going to be in my lifetime. Yes, I expect some more decades, but not in my lifetime. They know that. They don't think that they are going to defeat the Hamas. They are not that stupid. They know that, but it's very easy to fight and don't think about the future. The day after is in some decades from now. Plan B must be talking to the world, to the Arab states that my colleague Mark mentioned. Yes, I agree. I don't say that the Palestinian issue is a condition for that. Go on with them. But they say, some of them say, maybe not even all of them, but they say, they just had their declaration a week ago, and they say that they support demilitarization of Hamas. They have the Egyptian plane for Gaza. They have the Arab League Peace Initiative. After 23 years that Israel is ignoring the fact that 22 states surrounded us, initiated this initiative and approved that or reapproved 24 times. Nobody in Israel even know about that. I give lectures to young people. They never heard about that because they don't have to know about the reality. If they know about the reality, they will not go to fight in Gaza.
So we are going to run out of time. We literally have a minute left. So, Mark, I just want in one sentence, you say the goal is to win the war. Do you believe that with this plan we actually can, in really 10 seconds, yes or no?
It gives us a hope to win the war. It gives us also hope that maybe Hamas will finally agree to some hostage release and we'll get a temporary ceasefire, which maybe will give us a path to enter a war. I think that Hamas, we have to have no illusions about who we're dealing with, and that if they understand one message, it's the message of force, and winning militarily will create all sorts of possibilities politically in the months to come, including peace with Arab countries.
Well, amen to that. We can leave on a positive note, including peace. So thank you very much for Mark and for Mossi to be here tonight on this edition of Insider. I'm Maayan Hoffman, Executive Editor of ILTV, and I want to thank all of our viewers for watching.